2023 will be a critical year for Vladimir Putin. After a year of high-intensity fighting with no end in sight, Putin knows that if results aren't made, he's going to be forced into a difficult position. A position that internal threats may be eager to pin him in. Because of this, Putin has to win the war in 2023. If it draws into 2024 or beyond, assuming the casualty rate continues on its current track, then Russia could stand to lose up to 200,000 soldiers, as well as the majority of its vast tank fleet. That said, he knows that he's also attriting Ukraine, with many estimates showing a 1-to-1 casualty ratio between both Russia and Ukraine. This has led Putin and his military leadership to come up with a series of actions that, they hope, will help them win the war in 2023. These actions range from administrative changes to new additions to the military, as well as a new vision for how the war should be fought. The administrative changes developed between Putin and Minister of Defense Sergei Shoigu are far-reaching. First, Russia will split the Western Military District, which has previously encompass the entire border between the Voronezh Oblast, across the border with Belarus, Latvia, and Estonia, to the border with Finland in the north. It also includes the Kaliningrad enclave further east bordering Poland and Lithuania. This split will turn the formerly Western Military District into the Moscow and Leningrad military districts. And before the comments pour in, this is referring to the Leningrad Oblast, not Leningrad City, which has since been renamed St. Petersburg. This change would effectively split the north and south ends of the Western Military District, where the Leningrad Military District can focus on Finland and the Baltics, while Moscow Military District can focus on Ukraine. Though the Leningrad Military District will likely need to rotate forces into Ukraine to support the war effort. Second, new vehicle repair facilities will be created. According to Oryx, which tracks equipment losses through visual confirmation and other means, assesses that thus far, 5,395 Russian vehicles have been destroyed, with 218 damaged, 303 abandoned, and a further 2,704 captured from Ukraine. With new vehicle repair facilities, Russia can not only better maintain their remaining fleet, they can refurbish their damaged and captured vehicles as well. Third, Russia plans to establish several new divisions, with 3 new divisions coming from the occupied Ukrainian territories of Zaporizhia and Kherson, 7 new ground force divisions out of existing brigades, as well as coastal defense and VDV air assault divisions. With equipment being in short supply, it will be interesting to see how Putin and Shoigu choose to bring these divisions up to full strength. Whether they cannibalize existing formations in favor of the new divisions, or if the focus is just on manpower, who can fall in on existing equipment already in theater as soon as they get moved in. To bring these formations up to full strength, Putin is changing the age of conscription from 18 to 27 to 21 to 30. This is likely due to the amount of 18 to 21-year-olds already conscripted and deployed, as well as the amount of people who have left Russia as part of the partial mobilization began. Expanding the age bracket to include 28 and 30-year-olds expands the pool of eligible conscripts. It's also worth noting that while many may not have had any military experience at all, many more are likely to have that experience thanks to Russia's 1-year service obligation. They will likely still need further training to refresh what they know and also prepare for the new battlefield they'll be entering, but they'll bring with them more experience than what a raw civilian would bring when pressed into service. With the fresh divisions and increased age of conscription, Putin plans to more than double the amount of spots for contract servicemen from 695,000 to 1.5 million. How these spots are filled is an entirely different question, given the high rate of attrition due to contract servicemen becoming casualties. All these changes will cost Russia a lot of money, which their economy is becoming harder pressed to handle. Nevertheless, Putin has given Shoigu a blank check to get all of these tasks done. These changes were all publicly announced in late December 2022, but there's speculation that Putin may issue a new full mobilization. This mobilization may be executed quietly at first to prevent panic. However, the prevailing belief is that should the mobilization cause panic within Russia, similar to the partial mobilization in 2022, that Putin will direct the FSB to close the border to prevent its citizens from escaping conscription. With all these changes, Putin will have a large pool of soldiers he can use. While equipment is becoming a new constraint, a mobilization and transition of Russian factories to produce new equipment and ammunition could produce enough of both to temporarily sustain Russia's involvement in this war. However, similar to Russia's problems with manpower at the start of the war, Putin has learned that numbers aren't exactly enough. Adding sheer volume to the problem can prolong the current trajectory of the issue, but unless the strategy itself changes, it won't outright fix the problem. In this case, Russia's issues have been the result of a combination of problems, from lack of manpower to poor overall strategy, to say nothing of horrendous logistics at the start of the war, to what is now an issue of strategy. strategy. Putin has managed to, for the most part, either delay or resolve the manpower problem thanks to the partial mobilization and what could eventually become a full mobilization. What needs to be fixed now, Putin knows, is the way the war itself is being fought. This is how Putin can win the war in 2023. At the end of 2022, Russia retreated from areas around Kherson City, a move that managed to preserve many of its premier fighting forces, allowing Russia to use them in other parts of the extensive front line. Russia is also continuing its strategic bombing campaign. While historically it has shown that strategic bombing campaigns are not effective in wartime in turning a population against continuing the war, it has shown effective in forcing Ukraine to make hard decisions. Do they commit their precious few air defense resources from force protection duties in the areas where the fighting is, or do they use them to protect population centers and critical infrastructure further away from the fighting? While Ukraine's reception of Patriot air defense missile systems could be a huge help in intercepting larger threats like cruise missiles and even ballistic missiles, they aren't an effective solution against the numerous and cheap suicide drone threat. This is a threat that Russia has managed to lean into, with the purchase of the Shahed drones from Iran, as well as the assistance in creating a production facility inside of Russia, which would allow them to create even more of these drones on their own. Being cheap and easy to create, Russia can launch wave after wave of these drones at civilian infrastructure throughout Ukraine. This is a threat that Ukraine has managed to address in some areas, but it is a strain that takes resources away from the battlefield. With this campaign attacking critical infrastructure, Russia hopes to keep Ukraine in the dark, punishing its civilian population into submission. Effectively, this is a terror campaign that has the benefit of withdrawing Ukrainian resources away from force protection on the battlefield and towards protecting population centers. While this campaign is running, Russia not only seeks to hold on to territory they've already taken so far, they may seek to take even more territory in the future. Putin and Shoigu, flush with conscripts thanks to mobilization, can use the volume of new soldiers to stiffen the existing lines of contact with Ukraine, preventing another breakout like the Kharkiv offensive in 2022. As Stalin once said, quantity has a quality all its own. Putin doesn't just want to stabilize the line though, he wants to win the war outright, though it doesn't have to be purely a military victory. So long as Putin stays in power, he can always work an angle to achieve the results he desires. Should Russia succeed in stabilizing the front and preventing any further successful Ukrainian offensives, the strategy can become simple and effective, yet incredibly bloody. Putin can simply turn this into a war of attrition. This can already be seen in areas like Bakhmut, where Russia has been willing to throw thousands of soldiers into what has been referred to as a meat grinder. And while Russia has lost thousands of soldiers, Ukraine has also lost thousands of soldiers. Even if Bakhmut holds no tactical or strategic value, it holds value because Putin, Shoigu, Chief of Staff Valery Gerasimov, or even Wagner PMC head Yevgeny Prigozhin say it holds value. It also gives them a ground to attrit Ukrainian forces in a similar manner to the Battle of Severodonetsk. And while Severodonetsk fell after weeks of intense attritional fighting, Bakhmut has held for months, but has been no less deadly. Putin may also seek a new offensive south from Belarus towards Kiev, though the function of this potential attack could serve a different purpose from the assault in February 2022, where in the first attack the goal was to rapidly advance south to the capital in an effort to take the city and decapitate the government. This attack could be merely to fix Ukrainian forces in the north by the capital, again hundreds of miles away from the fighting around Zaporizhia, Donetsk, and Luhansk. This attack doesn't have to be successful in pushing south or taking the city of Kiev. It merely has to be successful in drawing Ukrainian combat power to the north away from where the fighting is currently. This could open the door for fresh Russian offensives across the eastern line of contact. While the current fighting has been incredibly bloody and fresh offensives along these lines will also be incredibly bloody, Russia doesn't need to beat Ukraine with superior technology along this front line. Russia needs to overwhelm Ukraine with numbers and lines of effort, and then from there, simply attrit the Ukrainian military to the point where it can no longer sustain the fight. For this plan to fail, Ukraine will need to successfully balance fighting across multiple areas as they have throughout 2022, but they may also need to successfully implement more equipment provided by NATO and other countries. Equipment like air defense assets to protect population centers from Russia's bombing campaign, as well as to protect Ukrainian forces from air attack across the lines of contact. This also includes equipment like tanks and IFVs being sent to Ukraine, which can help tip the balance in areas where Russia's equipment shortages are more acute. Simply put, Ukraine has to over-attrit the Russians and minimize their own casualties. Putin knows that he has a long road ahead of him if he's going to win this war, but he also knows that he's no longer on the driver's driver's seat. Ukraine has the initiative, and Ukraine seeks to liberate all the territory Putin has stolen from them, including the strategically critical province of Crimea. While he has plenty of resources to keep this war going well into the future, Putin knows that if he can't achieve success in 2023, he likely won't have any cards left to play in 2024. He's fighting not only on borrowed time, but stolen territory. He's shown that he's willing to spend everything Russia has to win this war, but lingering in the back of his mind is a very important question. A question he was not confronted with before this war, and one that could become more dominant should his plans fail. Is Russia willing to spend everything for him?